Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where ancient wisdom meets modern living. Here on our channel, we're dedicated to transforming the timeless teachings of classical Stoic philosophy into practical tools that help you create genuine meaning, authentic relationships, and deep satisfaction in a world obsessed with surface-level success and material accumulation. You're living in an era where you're constantly told that happiness comes from having more, achieving higher status, or gaining external recognition. Yet despite checking all the conventional boxes of success, you find yourself feeling empty and unfulfilled. You've accumulated possessions that were supposed to bring joy, achieved goals that were supposed to create satisfaction, and built a lifestyle that looks impressive from the outside but feels hollow from within. Every day you wake up wondering if this is really all there is, if true meaning exists somewhere beyond the endless cycle of earning, spending, and striving for more. What if you discovered that over 2,000 years ago, the wisest philosophers in history identified the exact source of authentic fulfillment and developed a complete system for creating meaningful lives based on simplicity, virtue, and genuine human connection? What if they proved that the deepest satisfaction comes not from accumulating more but from focusing on what truly matters, not from impressing others but from developing your character, and not from endless busyness but from purposeful living aligned with your deepest values? Marcus Aurelius, despite having access to unlimited wealth and power as Emperor of Rome, chose to live simply and find meaning through service to others and personal virtue development. Seneca, one of the richest men in the ancient world, discovered that genuine happiness came from friendship, wisdom, and contribution to the common good, rather than from his vast possessions or political influence. Epictetus, who owned virtually nothing due to his background as a slave, developed such profound contentment and wisdom that people traveled across the empire to learn from him. Today, you're going to learn their complete system for meaningful living through Stoic simplicity. Not empty minimalism or aesthetic lifestyle choices, but practical wisdom for identifying what genuinely matters, building relationships based on virtue rather than mutual benefit, finding joy in ordinary moments, and creating work that serves your deepest sense of purpose. You'll discover why less truly becomes more when you focus on what matters, why simple pleasures provide deeper satisfaction than expensive pursuits, and why authentic connections create more happiness than social status. Most importantly, you'll learn to build what the Stoics called a well-lived life, where every day feels meaningful because it aligns with your values, every relationship enriches your character, and every choice contributes to genuine flourishing rather than merely looking successful to others. The ancient Stoics understood something profound. True wealth comes from needing little, genuine success comes from virtue rather than achievement, and lasting happiness comes from appreciating what you already have while contributing to something larger than yourself. Over the next several sections, you'll learn exactly how to create this kind of meaningful existence using principles that have guided millions of people toward authentic fulfillment for over 2 millennia. Let's begin building your most meaningful life. 1. Discover your true life purpose and values. You're lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, feeling successful on paper but empty inside, wondering if the life you've built actually reflects who you really are or just what society told you to want. Your career pays well and looks impressive to others, but it doesn't ignite any passion or sense of purpose. Your relationships feel superficial, your possessions feel meaningless, and your daily routine feels like an endless loop of obligations rather than choices that honor your deepest values. This middle-of-the-night existential questioning reveals exactly why the ancient Stoics understood that discovering your true purpose isn't a luxury for people who have time for philosophical contemplation, but the essential foundation for anyone who wants to experience genuine satisfaction and authentic meaning in their daily existence. Marcus Aurelius, despite inheriting the most powerful position in the ancient world, spent considerable time examining what truly mattered beyond external titles, possessions, or social recognition. In his Meditations, he writes, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do?" This wasn't abstract philosophical musing, but practical recognition that meaningful living requires understanding your fundamental purpose as a human being rather than simply pursuing whatever goals your culture happens to emphasize. The Stoic approach to discovering purpose begins with what Epictetus taught as the discipline of roles, which means identifying the various responsibilities and relationships that define your authentic identity rather than the artificial identities created by job titles, social status, or material achievements. You are simultaneously a human being with universal responsibilities to virtue and reason, a citizen with duties to your community, a family member with obligations to those who depend on you, and an individual with unique talents and circumstances that determine how you can best contribute to the common good. This multi-layered understanding of purpose immediately grounds your life in concrete realities rather than abstract aspirations that may have nothing to do with your actual circumstances, capabilities, or genuine obligations. Instead of wondering what you're passionate about or what would make you happy, you examine what roles you actually occupy and how you can fulfill those roles with excellence, virtue, and service to others. Consider how this applies to your late-night existential questioning. Your current career might feel meaningless not because it's inherently purposeless, but because you're approaching it as merely a means to earn money or gain status, rather than as an opportunity to serve others, develop your capabilities, and contribute to something larger than yourself. The Stoic approach asks, how can I perform my current professional responsibilities with such excellence and virtue that my work becomes a form of service rather than merely a job? Seneca provides practical guidance for this reframing in his letters to Lucilius. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. When you end the pursuit of purpose through external achievements or social validation, you begin discovering meaning through the quality of your character and the virtue you bring to your existing responsibilities. Purpose isn't something you find outside yourself, but something you create through how you approach the roles and relationships that already define your life. The ancient Stoics understood that authentic purpose always involves contribution to the common good rather than purely personal satisfaction or individual achievement. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminds himself that human beings are designed for cooperation and mutual support, meaning that your individual flourishing is inseparable from your contribution to the flourishing of others. This perspective transforms the question from, "What do I want to do?" to, "How can I best serve the needs of my community using my particular talents and circumstances?" This service-oriented approach to purpose eliminates the self-centered anxiety that comes from trying to find meaning through personal fulfillment, while connecting you to sources of satisfaction that remain stable regardless of external circumstances or temporary mood fluctuations. When your purpose centers on serving others through virtue, you can find meaning in any situation because every circumstance presents opportunities for kindness, justice, courage, and wisdom. Epictetus taught that discovering authentic values requires what he called preferred indifference, meaning that while you naturally prefer comfort to discomfort, success to failure, and recognition to obscurity, you understand that your fundamental values must be independent of these external circumstances. Your core values must be things like honesty, compassion, perseverance, and service that you can practice regardless of whether your external circumstances are favorable or challenging. This examination reveals which of your current goals and priorities align with authentic values versus those that simply reflect social pressure, unconscious assumptions, or temporary desires that don't actually serve your long-term character development or contribution to others. You might discover that some pursuits you thought were important actually distract you from what genuinely matters, while some activities you've been overlooking contain profound opportunities for meaningful contribution. The practical discovery of purpose requires what Marcus Aurelius called daily examination, which means regularly asking yourself whether your choices, activities, and priorities align with your authentic roles and values, or whether you've been pulled away from meaningful living by distractions that feel urgent but aren't actually important. This daily reflection ensures that your life gradually aligns more closely with your deepest values rather than drifting away from what matters most. Therefore, discovering your true life purpose and values emerges through systematic examination of your authentic roles, commitment to serving the common good through virtue, and daily choices that honor your deepest responsibilities rather than pursuing meaning through external achievements or social validation. 2. Master the freedom of simple living. You're standing in your cluttered garage, surrounded by boxes of items you purchased with enthusiasm but haven't touched in years. And you realize that instead of these possessions serving your life, you've somehow become a servant to maintaining, organizing, and storing things that add no value to your daily existence. Your closet overflows with clothes you rarely wear. Your kitchen contains gadgets you never use, and your digital life is filled with subscriptions, apps, and commitments that consume your time without enriching your experience. This moment of recognition reveals exactly why the ancient Stoics understood that true freedom doesn't come from having the resources to buy whatever you want, but from wanting so little that no external circumstances can threaten your peace or satisfaction. Marcus Aurelius, who had access to every luxury the Roman Empire could provide, chose to live with remarkable simplicity because he understood that each additional possession or commitment creates potential sources of anxiety, distraction, and dependency that diminish rather than enhance authentic freedom. In his meditations, he reflects, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't ascetic deprivation but strategic wisdom that recognizes how possessions can possess you when you lose sight of what genuinely contributes to flourishing versus what merely satisfies temporary desires or social expectations. The Stoic approach to simple living begins with what Seneca taught as the discipline of preferred indifference, which means understanding the crucial distinction between things that are genuinely necessary for human flourishing and things that might be pleasant or convenient but aren't essential for living well. Your garage full of unused items represents the confusion between these categories, where objects that seemed important at the time of purchase revealed themselves to be indifferent to your actual well-being and satisfaction. This discrimination requires honest examination of how each possession, commitment, or lifestyle choice actually affects your ability to focus on what matters most. Developing virtue, maintaining relationships, contributing to your community, and creating space for reflection and growth. When you apply this standard to your current possessions, you discover that most things you thought you needed were actually distractions from the activities and relationships that create genuine satisfaction. Epictetus, who owned virtually nothing due to his background as a slave, developed profound insights about the relationship between possessions and freedom that challenged contemporary assumptions about success and security. He taught that every object you own creates potential sources of worry. It can be lost, stolen, damaged, or become obsolete, which means that accumulating possessions multiplies your vulnerabilities rather than increasing your security or happiness. Consider how this applies to your cluttered garage scenario. Each unused item represents not just wasted money but ongoing mental energy spent remembering where things are stored, feeling guilty about not using them, and maintaining storage systems that serve no productive purpose. The mental clarity that comes from releasing these unnecessary possessions creates space for activities and relationships that actually enrich your life rather than complicate it. The practical mastery of simple living requires what Marcus Aurelius called voluntary poverty, which doesn't mean depriving yourself of legitimate needs or reasonable comforts, but rather choosing to want less so that you depend less on external circumstances for your contentment and peace of mind. This might mean buying fewer clothes but choosing higher quality items that serve multiple purposes, or owning fewer books but reading each one thoroughly rather than accumulating impressive libraries that remain largely unread. This voluntary simplicity extends beyond material possessions to include commitments, relationships, and activities that consume time and energy without contributing meaningfully to your character development or service to others. Just as your garage contains physical items that seemed important when acquired but proved unnecessary, your schedule might contain commitments that felt meaningful when accepted but now prevent you from focusing on what truly matters. Seneca provides practical guidance for this simplification process in his letters to Lucilius. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor. He suggests regularly examining your possessions, commitments, and lifestyle choices to identify what genuinely serves your well-being versus what merely satisfies habitual desires or social pressure that don't align with your authentic values and priorities. Applied to your situation, this might mean systematically going through your possessions and asking of each item, does this contribute to my ability to live virtuously, maintain meaningful relationships, or serve others effectively? Items that don't meet these criteria become candidates for donation, sale, or disposal, not because possessions are inherently bad, but because unnecessary possessions create unnecessary complexity. The ancient Stoics understood that simple living creates freedom in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Financial freedom emerges when you spend money only on things that genuinely enhance your life rather than accumulating items that provide temporary satisfaction followed by an ongoing maintenance burden. Mental freedom develops when you eliminate the cognitive load of managing, organizing, and maintaining unnecessary possessions and commitments. Most importantly, simple living creates what Epictetus called autarkia, which means self-sufficiency and independence from external circumstances for your fundamental well-being. When you need less, you become less vulnerable to economic changes, social pressures, or unexpected circumstances that might threaten your security or peace of mind. Your happiness depends on factors within your control rather than on maintaining access to numerous possessions or lifestyle elements that exist outside your influence. The transformation from complicated to simple living requires what Marcus Aurelius practiced as gradual reduction, which means systematically identifying and eliminating non-essential elements from your life while strengthening your focus on what remains. This isn't dramatic purging, but thoughtful curation that ensures every possession, commitment, and activity in your life serves a clear purpose aligned with your authentic values. Therefore, mastering the freedom of simple living creates space for what matters most by eliminating what doesn't, transforming your relationship with possessions from dependency to conscious choice, while increasing your capacity for virtue, relationships, and meaningful contribution to others. 3. Build relationships that enrich your soul. You're at a networking event surrounded by dozens of people exchanging business cards and polite conversation. Yet you feel profoundly lonely because every interaction seems focused on what others can do for your career or what you can offer them professionally rather than any genuine human connection or mutual understanding. You go through the motions of small talk, share carefully crafted versions of your achievements, and collect contact information that will likely never lead to meaningful relationships, leaving you wondering why these social interactions feel so empty despite being exactly what you're supposed to do to build professional connections. This experience reveals exactly why the ancient Stoics understood that relationships based on mutual exploitation or social climbing create isolation rather than connection, while relationships built on virtue and genuine care for others' well-being become sources of profound satisfaction and spiritual enrichment. Marcus Aurelius, despite occupying a position that attracted countless people seeking favor, wealth, or political advantage, understood that authentic relationships must be based on virtue and mutual respect rather than on what people can provide for each other materially or socially. In his Meditations, he writes, "The best way of avenging thyself is not to become like the enemy." This principle applies to relationships by refusing to treat others as means to your ends, even when they attempt to use you for their purposes. Instead, maintaining your commitment to virtue and genuine care regardless of others' motivations or behavior. The Stoic approach to enriching relationships begins with what Epictetus taught as the discipline of social virtue, which means bringing wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance to every interaction rather than focusing primarily on what you can gain from social connections. At your networking event, this transforms your approach from asking, "What can this person do for me?" to asking, "How can I contribute positively to this conversation and this person's well-being?" This shift immediately changes the quality of your interactions because people sense authentic interest and care rather than calculated networking behavior. This virtue-based approach doesn't make you naive or vulnerable to exploitation, but rather ensures that your relationships are built on solid foundations that can weather difficulties and deepen over time, rather than remaining superficial connections that dissolve when they no longer serve mutual self-interest. When you consistently treat others with honesty, kindness, and genuine interest in their flourishing, you attract people who value these qualities and create relationships based on character rather than convenience. Seneca provides practical guidance for this transformation in his letters to Lucilius, where his friendship with Lucilius demonstrates how relationships can become vehicles for mutual philosophical development and character growth, rather than merely social entertainment or professional networking. He writes, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you end the pattern of transactional relationships, you begin creating connections that nourish your soul through shared commitment to virtue and mutual support for each other's character development. Applied to your networking scenario, this might mean asking genuine questions about others' experiences, challenges, and interests rather than immediately steering conversations toward potential business opportunities. You might share authentic struggles and insights rather than polished professional presentations, and offer help or resources without expecting immediate reciprocity. These approaches create the foundation for relationships that continue developing long after the networking event ends. The ancient Stoics understood that soul-enriching relationships require what Marcus Aurelius called sympathia, which means recognizing your fundamental interconnectedness with other people and understanding that their flourishing contributes to your own well-being, while their suffering diminishes the entire human community. This perspective transforms relationships from zero-sum competitions where one person's gain requires another's loss into collaborative partnerships where everyone benefits from each other's growth and success. This interconnected worldview eliminates the loneliness that comes from viewing yourself as separate from others and competing for limited resources or recognition. Instead, you experience genuine satisfaction when others succeed because you recognize that living in a community of flourishing, virtuous people creates better conditions for everyone, including yourself. Your relationships become sources of inspiration and support rather than sources of comparison and competition. Epictetus taught that building enriching relationships also requires what he called the discipline of desire applied to social connections, which means wanting only what you can control in relationships while releasing attachment to others' responses, opinions, or behaviors. You can control your own kindness, honesty, and reliability, but you cannot control whether others reciprocate these qualities or whether they appreciate your efforts to build a genuine connection. This approach liberates you from the exhausting effort to manage others' opinions or manipulate their responses to your social behavior. When you focus entirely on being the kind of person you respect in relationships, you experience satisfaction regardless of whether others respond in ways you prefer. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting poor treatment, but rather maintaining your standards for virtuous behavior regardless of external social pressures or others' choices. The practical building of soul-enriching relationships requires what Seneca practiced as philosophical friendship, which means sharing not just social activities or professional interests, but your deepest values, character development goals, and commitment to living virtuously. These conversations create intimacy and understanding that transcends surface-level compatibility and creates bonds based on what matters most in human life. This might involve discussing books that have influenced your thinking, sharing challenges you're facing in developing patience or courage, or exploring questions about meaning and purpose that rarely arise in conventional social interactions. These deeper conversations reveal who people really are beneath their social personas and create opportunities for the kind of mutual support and inspiration that enriches your soul rather than merely entertaining your mind. Marcus Aurelius understood that the highest form of relationship involves what he called service to the common good, where individual friendships contribute to the broader flourishing of your community and society. When your relationships are based on virtue and mutual character development, they naturally extend beyond personal benefit to create positive influence that radiates outward to families, workplaces, and communities. Therefore, building relationships that enrich your soul emerges through consistent virtue in social interactions, genuine care for others' well-being, and the gradual development of connections based on character and shared commitment to living meaningfully rather than superficial networking or mutual exploitation. 4. Transform ordinary moments into daily joy. You're rushing through your morning routine, mechanically brushing your teeth while mentally rehearsing your upcoming presentation, gulping coffee while scrolling through emails, and hurrying out the door without noticing the beautiful sunrise painting the sky outside your window. Your entire morning passes in a blur of productivity-focused activities, and by the time you arrive at work, you feel like you've already been running all day despite accomplishing nothing that brought you genuine satisfaction or moments of peace. This automatic, distracted approach to daily life reveals exactly why most people miss the countless opportunities for joy that exist within ordinary moments. While the ancient Stoics developed specific practices for transforming routine activities into sources of contentment and appreciation, Marcus Aurelius, despite managing the overwhelming responsibilities of ruling an empire during times of war and crisis, maintained practices for finding wonder and gratitude in simple daily experiences that most people overlook while pursuing extraordinary achievements or circumstances. In his meditations, he writes, "Dwell on the beauty of life, watch the stars, and see yourself running with them." This wasn't escapism from his duties, but recognition that joy exists abundantly in present moment awareness and appreciation for the ordinary miracles that surround us constantly. The Stoic approach to transforming ordinary moments begins with what Seneca taught as the discipline of present moment attention, which means bringing your complete awareness to whatever activity currently occupies your time rather than allowing your mind to scatter across past regrets, future anxieties, or mental multitasking that prevents you from fully engaging with immediate experience. Your morning routine becomes an opportunity for mindful appreciation rather than mere preparation for more important activities later in the day. This single-pointed attention reveals aspects of ordinary experiences that remain invisible when your consciousness is fragmented across multiple concerns. The taste of your morning coffee becomes more complex and satisfying when you're actually present while drinking it rather than using it as fuel while your mind races ahead to workplace challenges. The sensation of warm water during your shower becomes a moment of simple pleasure rather than an unconscious transition between sleep and productivity. Epictetus taught that this transformation requires what he called the discipline of perception, which means consciously choosing how you interpret ordinary events rather than automatically accepting your first emotional or mental reactions to daily experiences. Your commute to work can be viewed as wasted time that delays your arrival at more important activities, or it can become an opportunity for reflection, planning, or simply appreciating the changing scenery and human activity that surrounds your journey. Consider how this applies to your rushed morning scenario. Instead of treating your bathroom routine as a mindless necessity, you can approach toothbrushing as an act of self-care that maintains your health and demonstrates respect for your body. Instead of gulping coffee while multitasking, you can spend 2 minutes savoring the warmth, aroma, and flavor while appreciating the complex process that brought this beverage from distant farms to your morning routine. This isn't about moving more slowly or adding time-consuming practices to an already busy schedule, but rather about bringing conscious appreciation to activities you're already performing. The same actions that currently feel routine and joyless become sources of satisfaction when approached with attention and gratitude rather than distraction and impatience. The ancient Stoics understood that this practice requires what Marcus Aurelius called grateful recognition, which means actively acknowledging the countless elements that must coordinate perfectly for your ordinary experiences to be possible. Your morning coffee represents the work of farmers, transportation systems, roasters, and retailers, plus the natural processes of plant growth, weather patterns, and soil development that created the beans you're enjoying. This expanded awareness transforms simple activities into opportunities for appreciating your connection to the broader human community and natural world, rather than viewing daily life as isolated individual experiences. Your breakfast involves the labor and expertise of countless people you'll never meet. Your transportation relies on infrastructure created by previous generations, and your morning commute takes place within social systems that enable strangers to cooperate peacefully in complex coordination. Seneca provides practical guidance for this transformation in his letters to Lucilius. Every moment think steadily as a Roman and a man. He's encouraging consistent dignity and appreciation in each successive experience, rather than saving your attention and gratitude for special occasions while treating ordinary moments as mere preparation for more important events. Applied practically, this means occasionally pausing during routine activities to notice details you usually overlook. The texture of soap bubbles on your hands, the patterns of light coming through your window, the comfort of clothes that fit well, or the convenience of having clean water available whenever you need it. These micro moments of appreciation accumulate throughout the day to create an underlying sense of satisfaction and gratitude that doesn't depend on extraordinary circumstances. Epictetus taught that this practice becomes particularly powerful when applied to challenging or inconvenient aspects of daily life rather than only to obviously pleasant experiences. Traffic delays become opportunities for patience practice and people watching rather than sources of frustration. Household chores become acts of caring for your living environment rather than tedious obligations that prevent you from doing more enjoyable activities. The most profound aspect of this transformation is how it changes your relationship with time and satisfaction. When ordinary moments become sources of joy through conscious attention and appreciation, you no longer need special events, achievements, or circumstances to experience contentment. Your daily life becomes inherently fulfilling because you've developed the capacity to find meaning and pleasure in experiences that are always available rather than depending on rare or expensive pursuits for happiness. Marcus Aurelius understood that this practice creates what he called inner abundance, meaning that your satisfaction comes from your capacity to appreciate what's already present rather than from acquiring additional possessions, achievements, or experiences. This inner abundance remains stable regardless of external circumstances because it depends on your attention and attitude rather than on factors outside your control. Therefore, transforming ordinary moments into daily joy emerges through present moment attention, grateful recognition of the elements that enable simple pleasures, and conscious appreciation for the countless ordinary miracles that fill every day with opportunities for contentment and wonder. 5. Create work that feeds your spirit. You're sitting at your desk on a Monday morning, feeling that familiar sense of dread as you contemplate another week of tasks that pay your bills but leave your soul feeling empty and underutilized. Your job provides financial security and looks respectable on paper, but it doesn't tap into your deeper talents, contribute to anything you consider meaningful, or offer opportunities for the kind of growth and service that would make you excited to start each workday. You find yourself counting hours until quitting time, living for weekends, and wondering if this is how you want to spend the majority of your waking hours for the next several decades of your life. This disconnect between your daily work and your deeper sense of purpose reveals exactly why the ancient Stoics understood that meaningful work isn't a luxury for the fortunate few, but an essential component of human flourishing that anyone can create through the right understanding and approach. Marcus Aurelius, who inherited the most demanding job in the ancient world as Emperor of Rome, transformed his work from a burden of inherited obligation into a vehicle for virtue, service, and personal growth by understanding that any work can become spiritually nourishing when approached with the right perspective and commitment to excellence. In his meditations, he writes, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present with thee, that I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world?" This wasn't resignation to unpleasant duty, but recognition that work becomes meaningful when viewed as an opportunity to serve the common good and develop virtue, rather than merely a means to earn money or gain status. The Stoic approach to creating spiritually nourishing work begins with what Epictetus taught as the discipline of function, which means understanding that every legitimate role and responsibility offers opportunities for practicing wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance regardless of its external prestige or personal appeal. Your current job, even if it feels mundane or unsatisfying, provides daily chances to develop patience with difficult colleagues, fairness in handling responsibilities, courage in addressing problems, and wisdom in making decisions that serve long-term rather than short-term interests. This reframing immediately transforms your relationship with Monday morning dread because you're no longer viewing work as something you endure to earn money for your real life, but rather as a training ground for character development and service to others that gives meaning to each workday regardless of the specific tasks involved. Your job becomes a vehicle for becoming the kind of person you respect rather than merely a source of income that enables you to pursue meaning elsewhere. Seneca provides practical guidance for this transformation in his letters to Lucilius. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. When you end the pattern of viewing work as separate from your spiritual and character development, you begin to discover opportunities for growth and service within your existing professional responsibilities. This doesn't necessarily require changing careers, but rather changing how you approach the career you already have. Applied to your Monday morning scenario, this might mean identifying specific ways your current work contributes to others' well-being, even if indirectly. If you work in accounting, you're helping organizations manage resources effectively so they can serve their customers and employees better. If you work in customer service, you're solving problems and reducing frustration for people navigating complex systems. If you work in manufacturing, you're contributing to products that improve people's lives in practical ways. The ancient Stoics understood that work feeds your spirit when it becomes an expression of your commitment to virtue rather than merely a means to personal advancement or material security. This means approaching every task to perform it with excellence, not because you hope for recognition or reward, but because doing quality work reflects your character and serves the broader community that depends on everyone fulfilling their responsibilities competently. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called duty as devotion, which means treating your professional responsibilities as sacred obligations that deserve your best efforts, regardless of whether the work itself aligns perfectly with your personal preferences or talents. This approach transforms routine tasks into opportunities for demonstrating integrity, reliability, and craftsmanship that reflect your commitment to virtue rather than being motivated purely by external incentives. This doesn't mean accepting poor treatment or failing to pursue better opportunities when they arise, but rather ensuring that your current work becomes a vehicle for character development and service while you're engaged in it. You maintain professional excellence and ethical behavior regardless of whether your supervisor appreciates your efforts, your colleagues reciprocate your integrity, or your organization recognizes your contributions appropriately. Epictetus taught that creating meaningful work also requires what he called the discipline of desire applied to professional life, which means wanting only what lies within your control regarding your career while releasing attachment to outcomes that depend on factors outside your influence. You can control the quality of your work, your attitude toward colleagues, your commitment to learning and improvement, and your ethical standards, but you cannot control promotions, recognition, organizational changes, or economic conditions that affect your professional circumstances. This focus on controllable factors eliminates the frustration and anxiety that come from depending on external validation or advancement for your professional satisfaction. When your sense of accomplishment comes from knowing you performed your responsibilities with virtue and excellence, you can find satisfaction in your work regardless of whether others acknowledge your contributions or provide the opportunities you desire. The practical creation of spirit-nourishing work requires what Seneca called philosophical integration, which means bringing your deepest values and character development goals into your professional activities, rather than compartmentalizing your spiritual life and your work life as separate domains. This might involve finding opportunities to mentor younger colleagues, approaching workplace conflicts as chances to practice patience and understanding, or using your professional skills to contribute to causes you care about outside work hours. Therefore, creating work that feeds your spirit emerges through viewing professional responsibilities as opportunities for virtue development and service to others, bringing excellence and integrity to every task regardless of external recognition, and integrating your deepest values with your daily professional activities. 6. Find abundance in life's simplest gifts. You're scrolling through social media during your lunch break, watching friends post photos of exotic vacations, expensive purchases, and milestone celebrations, and despite having a comfortable life with a steady income, good health, and loving relationships, you find yourself feeling like your existence is somehow lacking compared to these curated highlights of others' experiences. The simple pleasure of eating your homemade sandwich in a quiet park suddenly feels inadequate compared to the restaurant meals, adventure activities, and luxury experiences filling your feed. This comparison-driven dissatisfaction reveals exactly why most people miss the profound abundance that already exists in their daily lives. While the ancient Stoics developed specific practices for recognizing and appreciating the countless gifts that surround you constantly but remain invisible when your attention focuses on what you don't have rather than what you do. Marcus Aurelius, despite having access to every luxury and pleasure the Roman Empire could provide, found his deepest satisfaction in simple experiences that cost nothing and remain available to anyone willing to pay attention to their immediate surroundings. In his Meditations, he writes, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't philosophical idealism from someone who never experienced want, but practical wisdom from a person who discovered that the most reliable sources of contentment exist independently of external circumstances, social status, or material possessions. The Stoic approach to recognizing abundance begins with what Epictetus taught as the discipline of gratitude, which means systematically acknowledging gifts you typically take for granted because they're consistently available rather than rare or expensive. Your ability to read these words represents an extraordinary gift that billions of people throughout history never possessed, yet you probably don't experience any wonder or appreciation for literacy because it feels normal rather than miraculous. Your access to clean drinking water, comfortable shelter, and abundant food represents luxuries that most humans who have ever lived never enjoyed. Yet these seem ordinary because they're reliably present. This shift in perspective immediately reveals the abundance that was always surrounding you but remained invisible because your attention focused on temporary desires rather than permanent blessings. Your simple lunch in the park becomes an opportunity to appreciate the complex systems that made fresh food available, the public spaces that provide beauty and tranquility, and your own healthy body that can digest nutrients and experience physical pleasure through taste and satisfaction. Seneca provides practical guidance for this recognition in his letters to Lucilius. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor. He suggests that poverty and abundance exist primarily in your relationship to your circumstances rather than in the circumstances themselves. When you constantly focus on what you lack, even extraordinary privileges feel insufficient. When you appreciate what you have, modest circumstances feel abundant because your satisfaction comes from recognition rather than acquisition. Applied to your social media comparison scenario, this means consciously shifting your attention from others' highlight reels to your own present blessings. Instead of viewing your homemade lunch as evidence of missing out on restaurant experiences, you can appreciate the care involved in preparing your own food, the savings that result from cooking at home, the health benefits of controlling ingredients, and the peaceful environment that allows you to eat mindfully rather than rushing through an expensive meal while distracted by social obligations. The ancient Stoics understood that finding abundance in simple gifts requires what Marcus Aurelius called present moment appreciation, which means fully engaging with immediate experiences rather than treating them as inadequate substitutes for better circumstances you imagine might be available elsewhere. Your quiet park lunch offers opportunities for observing nature, breathing fresh air, watching people interact, and experiencing the satisfaction of nourishing your body that remain completely unavailable when your mind focuses on comparing your experience to idealized alternatives. This present moment appreciation transforms everyday experiences into sources of wonder and contentment that don't depend on special circumstances or expensive purchases. The warmth of sunlight on your face becomes a gift regardless of whether you're experiencing it during a luxury vacation or a simple walk around your neighborhood. The taste of fresh water becomes a pleasure whether you're drinking it from an elegant glass in a fine restaurant or a simple cup in your own kitchen. Epictetus taught that this practice requires what he called preferred indifference, meaning that while you naturally prefer pleasant circumstances to difficult ones, you recognize that your fundamental well-being and satisfaction must be independent of external conditions that exist outside your control. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to genuine pleasures, but rather ensuring that your happiness doesn't depend on maintaining access to specific experiences or possessions that might become unavailable due to circumstances beyond your influence. This perspective eliminates the anxiety that comes from depending on external circumstances for contentment while allowing you to enjoy pleasant experiences fully when they're available. You can appreciate a beautiful sunset without needing to own property with perfect views, enjoy delicious food without requiring access to expensive restaurants, and find peace in natural settings without needing to live in scenic locations. The practical cultivation of this abundance awareness requires what Seneca called systematic appreciation, which means regularly examining your life to identify gifts you've been overlooking because they seem ordinary or permanent. This might involve spending a few minutes each morning acknowledging your functional senses that allow you to see, hear, taste, smell, and touch the world around you. Or taking time to appreciate your relationships with family and friends who provide support, companionship, and opportunities for giving and receiving love. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called the view from above, which means periodically considering how your current circumstances would appear to someone with less access to basic necessities, opportunities, or freedoms that you experience as normal parts of daily life. This perspective reveals abundance that's invisible when you compare your situation only to people who appear to have more rather than recognizing how much you have compared to most humans throughout history or even most people alive today. Therefore, finding abundance in life's simplest gifts emerges through systematic gratitude for consistently available blessings, present moment appreciation that reveals wonder in ordinary experiences, and recognition that satisfaction comes from acknowledging what you have rather than acquiring what you lack. 7. Design your personal philosophy of happiness. You're lying in bed after what most people would consider a successful day, having completed important work projects, spent time with people you care about, and taken care of practical responsibilities, yet you feel a nagging sense that something essential is missing from your approach to daily living. You've been following external guidelines about what should make you happy, pursuing goals that society says are important, and measuring your progress against conventional definitions of success, but you've never taken time to consciously examine what actually creates lasting satisfaction for you personally versus what merely provides temporary pleasure or social approval. This absence of a deliberate, Examined philosophy for living reveals exactly why most people experience happiness accidentally rather than systematically. While the ancient Stoics understood that sustainable well-being requires developing clear principles about what genuinely matters and how to organize your daily choices around those deeper values, Marcus Aurelius, despite inheriting conventional definitions of success through his position as emperor, spent considerable effort developing his own philosophical framework for happiness based on careful observation of what actually created lasting satisfaction versus what merely provided fleeting pleasure or social recognition. In his Meditations, he writes, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't a casual observation, but the result of systematic reflection on the relationship between external circumstances and internal contentment, leading to practical principles he could apply consistently regardless of changing situations. The Stoic approach to designing a personal philosophy of happiness begins with what Epictetus taught as honest self-examination, which means identifying patterns in your own experience about what creates genuine satisfaction versus what provides temporary entertainment or status that doesn't contribute to your deeper sense of fulfillment. This requires moving beyond cultural assumptions about what should make you happy to observe what actually does create lasting contentment in your specific life circumstances and personality. This examination might reveal that some activities you thought were supposed to bring happiness actually create more stress than satisfaction, while some simple experiences you've been overlooking consistently provide genuine contentment. Perhaps expensive entertainment leaves you feeling empty, while quiet conversations with close friends create lasting joy. Maybe career achievements provide brief satisfaction followed by new anxieties, while helping others create sustained meaning and purpose. Seneca provides guidance for this self-discovery process in his letters to Lucilius. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. When you end the pattern of accepting others' definitions of happiness without examination, you begin developing your own philosophical framework based on direct observation of what actually serves your well-being rather than what merely appears impressive to observers or aligns with social expectations. Applied to your successful but unsatisfying day scenario, this means examining each activity to assess its contribution to your genuine happiness rather than its contribution to productivity, social status, or external goals. Your work projects might provide income and professional recognition, but leave you feeling empty if they don't align with your values or contribute meaningfully to others' well-being. Your social interactions might fulfill obligations but drain your energy if they lack authenticity or mutual care. The ancient Stoics understood that sustainable happiness requires what Marcus Aurelius called virtue-based satisfaction, meaning that your deepest contentment comes from living according to your highest values rather than achieving external goals or accumulating pleasant experiences. This doesn't eliminate the enjoyment of legitimate pleasures, but it ensures that your fundamental well-being depends on factors within your control rather than on circumstances that might change due to forces outside your influence. This virtue-based approach creates what Epictetus called unshakable happiness because it remains available regardless of external circumstances. You can experience satisfaction from acting with honesty even when others behave deceptively. You can find meaning in showing kindness even when recipients don't appreciate your efforts. You can feel accomplished by doing excellent work even when that work doesn't receive recognition or reward. Your personal philosophy of happiness also needs what Seneca called integrated wholeness, which means ensuring that your various life areas support rather than contradict each other in contributing to your overall well-being. This requires examining whether your career, relationships, leisure activities, and personal practices all align with your core values, or whether some areas of your life undermine what you're trying to create in others. This integration might reveal that certain commitments or activities that seem beneficial in isolation actually conflict with your deeper goals for how you want to live. A high-paying job might provide financial security but require ethical compromises that damage your self-respect. Social relationships might provide entertainment, but lack the depth and mutual support that create lasting satisfaction. The practical design of your happiness philosophy requires what Marcus Aurelius called daily reflection, which means regularly examining whether your choices and activities align with your stated values and contribute to the kind of life you actually want to create rather than the kind of life others expect you to live. This daily check-in prevents you from drifting away from what matters most due to social pressure, habit, or immediate convenience that conflicts with long-term satisfaction. This reflection process helps you identify specific changes needed to align your daily life more closely with your authentic values and happiness priorities. You might need to eliminate activities that drain energy without providing meaningful benefits, strengthen relationships that nurture your growth and well-being, or modify work approaches to better serve your sense of purpose and contribution. Epictetus taught that the most sophisticated happiness philosophy includes what he called preferred indifference, meaning that while you naturally prefer comfort to discomfort and success to failure, your fundamental satisfaction must be independent of external circumstances that exist outside your control. This ensures that your happiness remains stable during inevitable changes in health, relationships, career, and life circumstances. This approach doesn't eliminate your natural preferences or make you indifferent to genuine pleasures and achievements, but it prevents your happiness from being hostage to factors you cannot control while allowing you to enjoy favorable circumstances fully when they're available without being devastated when they change. Therefore, designing your personal philosophy of happiness emerges through honest examination of what actually creates lasting satisfaction for you, alignment of daily choices with your authentic values, and development of virtue-based contentment that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. Your path to authentic fulfillment, daily integration, and lasting change. You now possess the complete framework that Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus used to create deeply meaningful lives through Stoic simplicity, virtue-based relationships, and authentic happiness that doesn't depend on external circumstances. These aren't abstract philosophical concepts or lifestyle trends, but practical principles that you can begin implementing immediately to transform how you approach purpose, possessions, relationships, and daily satisfaction. The question now becomes, how will you integrate these ancient secrets into your modern life to create the meaningful existence you truly desire? Remember that meaningful living develops through consistent daily choices rather than dramatic life overhauls. Start tomorrow by identifying your authentic values and examining whether your current activities align with what truly matters to you. Practice simple living by releasing one unnecessary possession or commitment that complicates your life without adding value. Transform one ordinary moment into an opportunity for joy and gratitude. Approach one relationship with greater virtue and authentic care. Most importantly, understand that meaningful living isn't about achieving perfect circumstances, but about bringing virtue, simplicity, and appreciation to whatever circumstances you encounter. Each time you choose purpose over convenience, relationships over transactions, and gratitude over comparison, you're building the foundation of a life that feels genuinely fulfilling rather than merely successful by external standards. The beautiful truth about Stoic simplicity is that once you discover what actually creates lasting satisfaction, you no longer need constant acquisition, achievement, or external validation to feel content. Your happiness becomes portable and sustainable because it depends on your character, choices, and appreciation rather than on factors outside your control. You develop what the ancient Stoics called self-sufficiency, meaning your well-being comes from internal sources that remain available regardless of changing circumstances. These principles don't just transform your personal experience of life. When you model meaningful living through virtue and simplicity, you inspire others to question their own assumptions about success and happiness. Your transformation becomes part of the solution to the meaning crisis affecting modern society, demonstrating that deep satisfaction comes from character development and authentic relationships rather than from accumulation and status competition. As you begin implementing these time-tested principles, you're joining a tradition of people who discovered that the most meaningful life is often the simplest one, focused on virtue rather than achievement, contribution rather than accumulation, and appreciation rather than acquisition. You're not just changing your lifestyle, but transforming into the kind of person who finds abundance in simplicity and joy in service to others. The ancient wisdom you've learned today will serve you for the rest of your life, but only if you commit to daily practice and consistent application. Your meaningful life begins with your very next choice. If this video has provided you with valuable insights for meaningful living, please like it and share it with others seeking authentic fulfillment. Subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel for more ancient wisdom that creates modern meaning. And let us know in the comments which principle most inspires your journey towards simpler, more meaningful living. Your path to authentic fulfillment starts now. Choose virtue, embrace simplicity, and discover the abundant life waiting within your reach.